Hi folks, this is Jim at your Jiffy Customer Support Network. In this segment we're going to cover the proper procedure for changing out the propane fuel delivery system on a Jiffy Model Pro4 propane powered ice drill. The first step that we are going to be taking to replace the propane fuel delivery system on the first generation Jiffy Model Pro4 is to loosen the retention clip that holds the black propane fuel line in position directly below the left edge of the engine valve cover. I've taken the liberty to go ahead and loosen that up ahead of time to save some overall time in the video. So we're going to go ahead and move on to the next step in the procedure, which is removing the throttle control lever from the operator handle on the spark plug side of the unit. We're going to do this just by using a medium Phillips screwdriver and unscrew that retention screw until the throttle handle comes loose to the operator handle. Once that's loose, we'll just set that down out of the way. And the next step we're going to take is to go ahead and remove the air cleaner assembly by removing the air cleaner cover, the foam filter element, and then we'll remove the air cleaner back plate by removing the retention nuts using a 5/16 nut driver. We want to set those nuts aside so we can find them when we reassemble everything after a while. Get the second one off here. Then we'll remove the retention clip for the back plate, and then we'll slide the air cleaner back plate off. And we'll remove the breather from the back of the air cleaner back plate, and we're also going to note here that there's a gasket that goes between the air cleaner and the carburetor. We want to make sure that gray gasket is in position when we reassemble this. The next thing we're going to do is loosen the fuel line from the carburetor fitting, and also loosen the fuel line fitting from the regulator. Then we'll go ahead and remove the retention clip that holds the fuel line in position to the side of the cylinder. We'll go ahead and remove the fuel line. Then the next thing we'll want to do is remove the carburetor and throttle assembly, and then we'll remove the propane fuel delivery system. Anytime that you're looking at doing repair work or replacing certain parts on the Jiffy Model Pro4 propane powered ice drill, you're going to want to take note that there are two different generation Pro4 units, and depending on the repair or the replacement, you're going to want to make sure that you identify which generation Pro4 model that you have. If you're replacing the carburetor, or if you're replacing the propane fuel delivery system, or changing out the throttle control, these are specific ones that there are different steps to completing the procedure for those replacements. So you're going to want to make sure that you identify the unit that you have. The two generation models are shown in the video here. The first unit on the right is the first generation, and it's identified by noting the aluminum fuel line that attaches the carburetor to the regulator, shown here in the video. Again, that's the first generation Pro4 model. The second generation Pro4 is shown here on the left, and the first thing you'll note the absence of the aluminum fuel line, because the carburetor and the regulator are attached directly by this brass fitting. That's the major difference between the two models, but it does create specific differences in the steps taken in the procedure of replacing those particular parts. So you want to make sure you take note of that. The next step we're going to want to take is go ahead and put the new fitting out of the fuel line kit on the carburetor. You're going to make sure that the yellow plumber's tape is in position on the threads. You also want to make sure that you get all the old plumber's tape out of the threads of the carburetor before you put the new fitting in. I'm going to go ahead and thread that back on. And again, we want to make sure that we get that back in the same location that the other fitting was when we took it off. And then we'll do the same thing with the regulator. Make sure again the red yellow plumber's tape is on, and also make sure all the old plumber's tape is out of the regulator. We'll go ahead and thread this on and get that back in the same position again. The next step you want to take in replacing the fuel line is to remove the fitting from the regulator, and you want to make note here of the position of the fitting, so when you put the new fitting on, you get it in location the same as the way you took the old fitting off. We'll go ahead and take the fitting off the carburetor. Again, making note of the position of the fitting on the carburetor, so we'll get the new fitting in the proper location. The first step we'll take in reassembling the new propane fuel delivery system is I'm going to go ahead and remount the fuel line back on the regulator. I'm not going to tighten that up though, I'm going to leave it loose until we get everything in position. We'll go ahead and slide the fuel delivery system back in its general location. Then we will want to go ahead and remount the carburetor back on the mounting studs. We want to make sure that the gasket between the carb adapter and the carburetor itself is in position. Then we're going to go ahead and start the nut on the carburetor, kind of lining everything up in proper position. And I'll go ahead and remount the fuel line retention clip on the side of the cylinder. Tighten that up. And I'm going to go ahead and tighten up the fuel line on the carburetor. Also the fuel line on the regulator. And the next thing we'll do is go ahead and remount the air cleaner backplate. And the first thing we want to remember is making sure that the gasket is in position that goes between the backplate and the carburetor. Remount the breather tube. Mount the air cleaner backplate back in position. The retention clip. And the retention nuts. Tighten those up, nice and snug. Go ahead and tighten the fuel line clip tight. We'll check to make sure the nuts are tight on the regulator and the carburetor. And we'll replace the foam air filter element and the air cleaner cover. Then we'll go ahead and remount the throttle control lever back on the operator handle. Again, just by screwing the retention screw back into the handle until it fits up nice and snug against the handle. Then we'll go ahead and retighten the clamp that holds the black fuel line back in position. On the Generation 1 Jiffy Model Pro4 propane powered ice drill, anytime that you work on the propane fuel system, whether it be the fuel line that attaches the carburetor to the regulator, or the carburetor itself, or the fuel delivery system, which includes the regulator and the hose, once you have everything reassembled, you want to make sure that you perform what's called a leak test. A leak test is performed by using a water-soap mixture along with a brush that you brush over the various fittings after you've got it reassembled. And then if you see any bubbles form, that's evidence of a leak. And the thing you'll want to do is retighten those fittings that leak and then re-perform the leak test until you make sure you have no bubbles. And that basically concludes the proper procedure for changing out the propane fuel delivery system on the Generation 1 Jiffy Model Pro4. Now that we have everything reassembled, the next thing we want to just double check is to make sure that the throttle lever on the carburetor functions properly with the throttle on the handle, to make sure everything works freely and everything. If anyone has any questions or concerns regarding this procedure, please feel free to contact us at one of the locations noted on your screen. I'd like to take this time to thank you for your continued support of Jiffy products and also the purchase of your Jiffy ice drill. Thanks and have a great day.